Okay, so this is May Day, and okay, so if you have hit API rate limit like me and want to work around this, to be honest, I didn't know I was going to talk about this because I remember I briefly explained this in a couple of days back. If you are watching this for the first time, this is the day 35 of the 60-day series where I break down the 5 layers of AI, starting from prompt engineering to AI automation, building AI agents to even agentic AI systems. I'm putting all these things out because most of the AI content you see out there are actually BS, and they're not explaining the main shit to you. So in some things I'm doing, I just decide to make videos like this, and I mean we've already gone through 34 days of content, and I was just working on something. I was trying something out, and this just came to me, and I felt okay. Probably I should set this out to be day 35. Anyway, so I normally how I do this is I put sources together. Not done that. Hold on. I'm gonna have to pause the video right now and put something together. Okay, so I'm pausing this video now. Alright, so yes, we are back. So normally how I do this is that I put together a resource guide where I explain to you a couple of things on that particular day, and I have just a couple just little things today which I just want to explain, and I might not even go through the entire resource guide, but I do believe I'm going to pass across every single thing I understand about this. So what you saw the other time on my make.com scenario, which is this, is basically telling me that is hitting rate limits, and this has really happened in any other software or service than in AI basically. And that is because one thing is that when you keep hitting errors like this, if you don't have an error handler that catches this, I explained about an error handler in day 20, I believe, and you don't have it diagnosed in probably your execution log. If you want to do this, I'll just explain to you briefly that catching an error like this and preventing one are actually two different things. I believe that error handling tells you, the way I say it, it tells you what breaks or probably what broke, while rate limit management itself stops you from breaking it in the first place. This is it's more like a prevention technique rather than having to it has happened before. We do say something over here in Nigeria here. I don't know if they say it elsewhere. I believe they say it elsewhere. Prevention is better than cure, right? So I mean, why do you have to get sick first when you can be immune to it, or when you can prevent it or avoid it or something? So today we are going to undo the prevention layer, and I'm going to cover just a couple of things, and that is what rate limits are, where you can hit them, and in the scenario that we've already built, cases where I remember adding a sleep module. Which was a fix to calculate a delay, because error handling might not only happen when you're using API keys or the rest. It can also happen in normal services as well. There are various services out there that you might hit rate limits anyway if you are using it for a lot of probably a high volume of work. And I'm also going to tell you about batch splitting. This is for processing high volume of work as well, and in this case I believe that even sleep is not enough. So anyway, let's just go into it. So rate limits are in every API. Okay. Every API restricts how many requests you can make in a given period of time, and not to be difficult, this happens for a couple of reasons. I can think of mainly three reasons. The first one is a fair access. That is one thing I believe is that if one person could make unlimited requests, for example, now they are going to consume all the server's capacity, except if it's a service that they've scaled high and above, that they're able to handle as much requests as possible. Maybe an example I can give you can be Google, for example. But even Google at one point changed their module. I remember when we had a module like this. We had a module like what Tally has and what Notion has, where you can just get a data, a webbook, you can get the data immediately. But imagine, Google actually removed that module and they turned it to something very, very crazy. That's Google Forms, right? So they turned it to something very, very crazy. And that is to watch responses, right? Now you cannot get it instantly. It has to be like in a polling trigger. This is it now. When you see this, it's going to change. Let's save this. You can see it just changed. So even Google had to work on it so as to avoid people calling it every single time. I believe a lot of people, because I was one of them, were calling their server every time. And at one point, if this thing happens, if a couple of people monopolize it because they have a heavy or voluminous work, a couple of people too will not get anything. That is why. The second one also, I believe, is server protection too. Unlimited requests from an automation like this, because I know I get, like, the time I was scraping leads and I was also sending leads out to a couple of, and I was also sending emails out to a couple to these leads. I remember that it was quite big. Something like this, though I might not have any ulterior motive aside from a personal thing, but there is this attack which they call a DDoS attack, and that is where people can flood a particular service with a lot of traffic so as to break it down or disrupt the server, basically. So in cases like this too, they have to work on rate limiting too, because it's more like a safety feature for them. While the third one also for monetization, in cases where you can imagine they decide to break this thing down and they're like, okay, you know what, if you are using a free account, in most cases I actually use free accounts, or for some services like in Google, it's a free account, right, for Google Forms and the rest, right? So they can decide to limit it, that because we are using free accounts, they can give us like a free trial can use, like, let me say 5 requests per minute, which is quite low. That means every 12 seconds, right? That's when we'll be able to call for this, which in most cases is actually quite fine. But for people that do a bunch of work, they might have to probably upgrade their payment plan or get a paid tier like that, a paid plan, a premium plan or something on Google, or probably buy pay for Google Enterprise, basically. So someone like that might decide they might get like probably every 1 second they get a request to go. So these are just these are just reasons that I feel like might drive services like this to just go in for restricting their API calls every single time. So how many limits? So how limits are expressed varies by the service, basically, and the request per minute, that is the RPM, which is most common. That's what that's request per minute, right? Is basically you calling, how many times can you call this service, how many times, and how much token can you expend from this service. In most cases, using API keys, we have to have things like that, and we actually have things like that in place. The other one is that's RPS, that is request per second. So that one too, though I don't believe that one is as common as RPM. For real time systems, request per hour or day also exists, where services that have like a monthly quota. For example, Claude has something similar to it, which you can only call it for a couple of times based on the tokens we spend, and once we are done with that, it's for we premium users, it can give us like a 5 hours break, basically, and after 5 hours we're able to access it again. And we can even have a limit for the amount of tokens we can expend in a week. Yeah, so for something like that, this is what we can call token token per minute. So APIs like Claude do that. So they count per token, not just requests. Anyway, these are the scenarios where you can hit rate limits. The one we built, I remember we built one that is our weekly lead digest. What the scenario I'm in currently is actually our lead tracker, right? It's actually our lead tracker. I just decided to test something inside here to see if my Gemini was actually going through, and that was when I hit this and I saw this, and basically it's like 429, right? So that means what? That is rate limit error, and that is because, well, my card on Gemini is already, I did not activate it, so I mean it was free before. That is what Google does every single time. They allow you to use their services. Then once they understand their customers very well and they see that their customers actually want their services, they use that as a form of attraction, which is actually very nice, because I remember building a lot using the free APIs basically. So we use this in a couple of cases. In this case, I wanted to use it to process some information, and I mean you can imagine eating rate limits like this, and I'm like, okay. So when you want to understand this, 429make.com basically happens this way. When you hit rate limit error, like what you see there, it's either your request token has exceeded your limit. That means you might have called this numerous times over within probably a span of maybe a couple of minutes, or maybe you even exhausted your tokens, like what I have here now. So in these cases, we could say the best thing we could do in the previous case, which is a scenario where you've exhausted the amount that you can call per minute, right? That's the rate per minute. That's the rate per minute, right? In this case, one of the things that you can do is adding a sleep module. What I mean is that you are meant to add a sleep module right in between the call here. So if the data I'm getting into my webhook in the first place, if it's obviously it is instant here, right? If it's meant to pass through here within like under milliseconds, basically, what I'm going to do is I can just add a module and say sleep, right? I can add a sleep, and I can delay it for a couple of seconds. The number of seconds for which the scenario will be suspended. So what you have here, you can delay it for, let me say, 5 seconds, right? Because it's rate per minute, and I want to ensure that whatever I have, we will have to process for 5 seconds. That means anything I'm going to do, I might only be able to have something processed every 5 seconds. That's about 12. Could go every minute. So this has reduced if on a norm it's meant to process under milliseconds. That means it's possible for me to process 2 under a second. It's possible for me to even process 3 under a second as well, under 1 second. Now I've been able to put these constraints to it, where I get to only process 1 every 5 seconds, and that means I can predict it to process about 12 details or 12 leads. If I'm having a high volume of leads every single second, I can process about 12 per minute, which is very good, which is actually very good. So when you add it there, it is nice. Another scenario where I believe you can add this is, let me just go to let's save this. Let's go to one of the things we built over the last couple of weeks. So we have this weekly lead digest. So let's see. Alright, so what we have here now, this weekly lead digest, if you guys remember, this is basically going to take every single details for that week. It's going to take every single detail for that week. This is actually supposed to run every, let's say, I set it weekly on every Saturday. Saturday is nice. Probably Sundays, so preparing for the new week, right? So something like this, and we have it and say, okay, so every Sunday by 7 p.m. The time 7 p.m. Wow, the time is 7 p.m. It's already late. not yet. So my god, I should have saved that. Okay, so custom schedule, that is basically what this now. Not yet still. So in a scenario where the weekly details I might actually get, I might get about 50 leads, right? And if I take 50 leads and rush every single thing here, I'll be very honest, it might be a lot of work, and it might be a lot of burden for Grok to process at once. So what I'm going to do here is, in fact, I believe this might even still be okay. This might be okay because it only processes it one by one. Yeah, right? It's breaking it down. Where we might need this might be this, maybe this exact place, right before the text aggregator, since we have batches, right? So we can imagine if we are able to get about 5 processing at once here, and we don't want to we don't want to send a lot of emails at once, right? So we can even start breaking it down here. So right in between this is where we can put our sleep. We can put our sleep here and we can set the duration to 1000. Let's see. How many seconds is 1000 millisecond? Okay. So this is 1.2 seconds. Okay. Alright, so this is still okay. 1.2 seconds actually. So we could set a module here, and that is sleep as well, right? So do we actually run this on the number of seconds? This is seconds, so we could, it's more or less 1 second then. It's more or less 1 second. So we could put this right in between. Why this is there is that since we have this, for it to process process every single thing and to send this, it's not going to suddenly send a bunch of details at once. If this takes a second, this can take a couple of milliseconds, and at the end of the day we have at least 1 second interval to send these emails, unlike having everything at batch and dumping it at once and having to send a long list of email to a bunch of people at once. In this case, though, we are sending it to ourselves, which means that we might not have any issue when it comes to Google blacklisting our accounts, since any email you send to yourself is actually protected, because it's almost like you're taking a journal. That is how Google sees it. So if you send an email to yourself, even 1 million times in a day, that is possible. Well, nobody can do 1 million times in a day, but that is fine. But you can imagine if you're sending this to people, to other people, other emails, that's going to be a disaster actually. It's going to be a disaster. So in another case, can also be the AI, the one I showed you guys the other time. Let me save this and this. The other one can be the AI. Let's see, where do we have an AI here? Okay, the only thing we added an AI here is digital receptionist. The only one thinking about the hot, warm and cold and every single thing there. So let's carry this camera off, and okay, alright, so yeah, so what we can also do here is right in between these two, what we see here, right in between these two, we've added this, right? In most cases, if you want to avoid hitting rate limits to be too strong as well, you can add this, and there are also things you can also consider as well. So I put this together here for you to understand the rate limit for APIs, and I believe I added for Grok. How come it's not here? I did add for Grok. Okay, wow. Yes, I added for Grok here. So you guys can see every single one for Anthropic. This is the free, this is the paid tier, and the most common bottleneck when it comes to Make.com in this case is an iterator loop. For Notion, actually, Notion is okay. It's okay. It's not going to break. I have done a lot of notion that I believe that it's not going to break. And also, even if you are using a pay tire or you're using a free tire, I believe that what you can just run it. It's the same thing. So, but most common break here is a batch record creation. If you are creating, this is basically saying if you are creating multiple pages at once, right? Let me say you have a lot of leads and you want to what? You want to fill them in. Each lead in your database has a new page. Each lead has a new page. So, or probably, yeah, that is the case. You are creating new database, new data, new. You are creating databases per call. That is also going to be crazy. So, in cases like this, it might actually break at that point. When it comes to Gmail, the example I explained to you also, yeah, that's the mass email sent, and this is the amount you can also send. The same thing as Paytm. So that's for people that are paying for Gmail access and AI and a couple of things on Google now. For OpenAI, you can see the distance between the free and the Paytm. That is actually crazy. For most of these AI or LLM, all these AI companies, I mean, you can see what they are providing everyone. So the iterator loop also the same thing as what we face on Claude. For Paystack, I believe this is higher, though I haven't really, we used it recently, so I just thought I could add that, but I believe this should be higher, and that has a low risk of breaking because since it's a payment processor, we believe that they've been able to work on that excessively. For Abstract as well, 100 per month for free. I did not check the pay tire, but it's also obvious. It's obviously going to be higher than this. So the only thing that can break there is monthly. Obviously, when you use it, when you use your calls, when you use it up. The other one here is your Telegram bot. So only if you are broadcasting, that's when. And to be honest, I don't really think anyone can break this because it's quite crazy. I don't think anyone can break this. Telegram can accept a lot, a huge lot. So there's a delay calculation of calculator formula now that I saw online, and I felt I could add it. So I saw it here. Let me cancel this out. I saw this here, and I decided to add it and do a couple of calculations there. So this is how to what? This is how to calculate your save delay, and with this you'll be able to know with this you'll be able to know the amount of seconds, milliseconds that will be taken each time for you to hit rate limit, probably per minute. So you'll be able to prevent a couple of this. You have to get if you are using a free trial or a paid trial for any of the APIs, you have to know which part you are on. You can just search online for this. In most cases, I search for Grok, and Grok is within this, which is not bad. For Claude free trial, you can see this quite high. For the paid trial, at least it's low this time around. You are dividing it based on what we see here. You are dividing it based on what we see here. So 5, that's the 5 for the free trial. That's it here, and this is what we get. This other one is for the page, which is obviously what we get here. That's tier 1, and you can see this. So the lesser the better. That's the way it is. The lesser the better. So I've explained about the sleep mode, which is the first way. The second way is you using a retry error handler. You can actually do this because when you guys think about it, if you hit rate limits, you could retry. Very simple. You could just if you hit rate limits here next time, you could just add an error handler and let it retry it once again. This is what I do. This is more like once it hits rate limits, what can you do? What can you do to ensure that whatever detail that is there is not lost? Because in that case, even if you come back to check it and you set everything up again, that particular lead, that detail, if it's missing in your database or anything, it could cause a lot of problem, or you could lose leads from there. So you can add a retry, which obviously, what is it doing? It's going to save the boundary. It's going to save that particular detail that did not process or did not go through. To save it and help you retry after 15 minutes, or saves it and help you retry after like 3 minutes or 1 minute, whichever one. So, and you could have a lot of errors or a lot of incomplete executions. So it's possible for you to just run everything the next minute, or you could run everything the next 3 minutes. I would go for 3 minutes because I believe that if the next 1 minute we have the same volume of numbers of details or leads that comes through and it's going to run itself, that means the second minute it might run itself again, but there will be a rebound on like in number 3 we have a rebound, number 6 we have a rebound, in number 9 we have a rebound. But that rebound also means that you have a lot of unsaved or incomplete executions as well. It still works if you use 1 minute, but I believe that on that rebound itself you could have your 3 minutes in. So just have this in. Anytime you reach limits, it's going to save it here. An example of what I'm saying is, let us run this real quick. And we see now, so if this doesn't work, you can see what happened there now. This still gave us rate limit issue, though it's because I've not paid. Once again, I am hoeing. I'm not hoeing. I did not pay for this. I mean, I have a free API use here on Grok, so why would I have to pay for this if what I'm using it for, Grok can even use it better, or the model on Grok is better than that. So I believe that that is better. Anyway, you can see you have this saved. So this was a success. After how many minutes? After 3 minutes, it's going to try it again. No issue, right? So yeah, that is what we have here. And right after that, there's another one which is called batch splitting. This is used mainly for high volume of work, where sleep alone is very slow to split into batches. You can assume when you have a high volume of work and sleep cannot just undo it. So you can just you can do it in a way where you set a condition that will say anytime, let's assume you want to process about 20 leads now, you could have 4 scenarios where scenario A process about 50 leads, scenario B process 50 leads, scenario C 50 leads, scenario D also 50 leads rather, and this process it at separate times, so each of these, if you could have, this is you having different, probably you have different APIs. In this case you might have different API keys. You could run these across each other. So each time if this happens, it also makes it possible for you to track which one breaks, and you'll be able to see that while the others are going to work, if anyone breaks, you can put all these other things like the error handler, which is the retry, or even the sleep, inside each one of them. So in any case anyone breaks, doesn't affect the rest of the detail. This can also be in a case where you could even run it at the same time, but that's going to break. So the best thing is to run it at different times. But this can help where you don't need sequential processing. What I mean by you don't need the sequential processing is, if you have those 200 leads, you don't need them to be in order. You don't need them to be, this person that came in first must always be the first, right? So you could have even the number 51 as the first if number 1 fails to go through. So in cases like this, I mean, you could actually see this work. And yeah, so what I just believe is that if you can adjust this time range per scenario that you have, you are basically creating something like batches. You understand? So in this case, it's more like this pagination stuff where the first 50 goes, the next 50 goes, the third and the fourth 50 goes. So when it comes to this, I believe that you are actually able to solve this easily. Then the next one I'm going to talk about is common rate limit heading. So many APIs tell you exactly where you stand in their response header, like what we have here. I mean, it's pretty obvious. It's pretty obvious. They are making it very clear. So in cases like this, after a successful call, the output bundle that contains this is going to show you something like this, like how many requests. What we have here now is an error, right? It's also possible for you to see how many tokens you use and how many tokens are even left. So in cases like this, I think this happens in the anthropic module. That's Claude. It happens there. I don't have a paid plan on Claude API, so we could just skip that. But it happens there where you see how many requests that you have. So anyway, in cases like this, you are able to manage it effectively. So it's even possible for you to send it as a log to yourself on Telegram. So anytime you get results from your AI or from Claude, for example, now you could also map that token. You could map the token value, map it to probably your Telegram or map it to yourself anyway. So when you're getting this, you'll be able to manage your tokens. And at one point, if you understand the calculation, let me say each run takes just about 5,000 tokens, right? If you could see the same thing across multiple calls, that means you could predict at least how much tokens you are exhausting per run, per call. So in this case, I could say you could actually manage this very well. You could manage this very well, and you can even slow down or probably pause or improvise before you hit zero, basically. So rate limits is not a bug, and it's just something you expect. Any production API, not just AI, every other service out there. So the right response to this, what I could have done was, oh my God, what is going on? It seems that there's something going on my Gemini, and I'm in trouble and all, right? But it's just that I need to calculate. In my case, I need to buy. So obviously, I do need to buy. But in your case, it could just be, your request per minute, probably broke, and that delay is literally telling you what you require. You need to manage your API calls. So in cases like this now, what happens when something like this slips through? That is where you get to add your retry pattern. And what is the fallback if a retry fails? Now you have basically three answers I've given you. That's the sleep module, the retry error handler, and that batch splitting where you can have 4 scenarios to process a particular detail so it won't break. So anyway, I just put this thing together. You guys can see that my background is a bit different from usual. I am working on my room at the moment, so for the meantime, I might need to just manage this, background and everything. And yeah, I do hope this is not distracting. The lights is not distracting, but right. So yes, the next thing is we're going to be talking about MCPs. That's day 36, and that's going to be very interesting. I'm pretty sure a lot of you have been seeing that across the internet since 2025, November 2025, when that shit started. So we're going to have some introductions, what is MCP, and how this works in AI integration, and how MCP also opens this new layer to us that's layer 4. We're going to talk about all of that. So yeah, you guys can check this resource guide, and you also see the calculation, every single thing I did here. You see the calculation that I have here right on top here. Yes, this is the calculator here, so you'll be able to use this for your own scenarios as well. And yeah, if you have any question, drop it in the comment below or anywhere below that you have. And yeah, if I have to also, I'll break it down, I'll explain, and I might even make a video for you on it. So yeah, just drop your questions. I would love to hear from you guys. So we'll be using this background for the meantime. I'll see you guys. All right, peace.